Well, we've discussed some of the premillennial views, dispensational premillennialism and historic premillennialism, the arguments for them and against them. But there are some other mediating premillennial views that we might just mention in passing. There's a view called mid-tribulationalism. My teacher in seminary, Gleason Archer, was a defender of this point of view. He believed that Christ came 3.5 years into the tribulation, about halfway through, and raptures the church at that point. And then so the church will go through half of the tribulation, but will be excluded from the other half of the tribulation. And this is in some ways similar to another view that's out there called the pre-wrath rapture theory. And this says that Christ comes after the wrath of man, but before the pouring out of the wrath of God. And exactly where you place that point, you may end up with basically another version of mid-tribulationalism. But you could put it near the end, which essentially would make it a post-tribulational view with just a little bit of wrath of God, a short period of wrath of God, following a longer period of wrath of man tribulation. But anyway, that's the pre-wrath rapture theory that's there. A very minor view that I've never really run across anybody who held it is called the partial rapture view, which says that Christ will take only the most faithful believers in the rapture. And the last view is a view called imminent post-tribulationalism. It states that we do not know when we are in the Great Tribulation. We won't know that until Christ actually comes again. So that he can come at any second, the way that dispensational premillennialism says, but he can come at any second, and yet it's only in retrospect that we will realize that we had been in the tribulation when Christ does, in fact, occur. So it's post-tribulational, but the tribulation is hard enough to recognize that we'll only know in retrospect that, oh, that was the tribulation. So anyway, those are views that are less common, but are out there. Particularly pre-wrath rapture has had some promotion in recent years. Well, what are we going to conclude then about eschatology? Eschatology is clearly an important subject, but as our discussion of it has shown, a difficult subject. Our discussion basically introduces some of the arguments about eschatology. Whole books have been written on it, so we can't get into the details here. The essential orthodox thing to teach, though, is to believe that Jesus is coming again. That is the most essential thing. The details of when and how are much less important and not essentials of the faith. So if one person says that the sequence of the second coming is A, B, C, D, and the other one says it's A, C, B, D, or some other various combination, well, that's not the most important thing. The most important thing that he is coming to judge the quick and the dead, as it says in the creeds. So that's our discussion of the second coming of Christ.